It's the Cavaliers Basketball Club Podcast.
It's basketball time. The cube. LeBron left to the circle, left to the lane. Gonna go all the way and hammer it home. Everybody on their feet. Sends it for three. Oh, are you kidding me? It's over. The 52-year drought is over. The Cavaliers have won the NBA championship.
We wanted to go in a different direction. We wanted a different approach.
60.
The shoot-around.
The Cavs have been one of the biggest surprises this season. With an 18-9 record at home and a 17-14 record on the road, they're proving night in and night out they belong with the best in the league. Barring further injuries or a catastrophic collapse, we'll be making the playoffs this year for sure.
Cleveland just hosted the 2022 NBA All-Star Weekend, and it was a big deal. Not only was it a celebration of 75 years of the NBA, but also a celebration of the success of our beloved Cavaliers.
It was awesome to see the NBA All-Star Weekend come to Cleveland. It was truly a night to celebrate basketball and the Cavaliers. And that being said, the 4 players that participated for the Wine and Gold are just the beginning. How many future All-Stars do we currently have on this team, and what's our future hold?
As of right now, we have 4 players participating, which is a ton, especially for a young team like this. You could definitely make the case that the Cavs could add 1 or 2 more during this run of young talent. Sexton's been out this entire season. He's the most notable player I can think of that he could make the All-Star game specifically. I could also see Lauri making the three-point competition. His three-point shot has been off this season, but he's also faced some injury issues. If he continues to progress in the offense and keeps starting, I think he could at least participate in that angle. So I would say at least 1 or 2 more, and Colin Sexton being a definite. Even if he isn't starting, I think he could get a lot of play as a 6th man because his numbers were so good coming into this season.
Yes, last year he was so close to being voted into participating in the All-Star Weekend. There's no reason to believe that his numbers wouldn't have continued to stay the same, if not continue to rise. He would have had a lot more people to lean on and not have to kind of exhaust himself every night. And, we've seen that everybody on this team has been able to thrive based on kind of being able to, on when it's their night, Bickerstaff and team knows how to lean on them and to bring their best skill sets forward. And it would have been the same thing with Sexton. Looking at our roster, we had 4 guys go basically in some fashion, and we probably could have another 4 in the future. And that's, I'm biased, I understand that, but let's name them, right? So Darius Garland, he went. Allen, he went. Mobley, he went. Okoro, he went. So that's 4 right there. Kevin Love, you could argue that he could have gone this year. He's shooting 50% from 3 most of the season. We've already had conversations in the last podcast that he could easily be in running for 6th man of the season. That's 5 there. And he's an all-star in the past, so duh. Colin Sexton, 6. You've got Lauri Markkanen. I do believe that he's got a future of going to a few all-star games. And then we got, I think, Jetty. In the right circumstances, could at least go to 3-point competitions. He's going to be participating, I think, possibly in stuff like that. And then I'm also high on Dean Wade, Lamar Stevens. I believe some of these guys, given a long enough career, we could see them go to a couple of our all-star games because the skill set, the talent that the Cavs have been able to pull together in the last few seasons is just, it's immeasurable. It's impossible to really sit here and try to tell you, just how bright our future is based on the talent pool that we have to work with every day.
I think Mobley and Garland and even Allen have the chance to be regulars in getting voted into participating in the game, with Sexton kind of being that wild card where, depending on how he's doing that season and what his impact is, he could also get some votes as well. So, I'm very pleased with how the team is performing, and it was just so cool to see that many guys represent Cleveland and on such a cold weekend. And so I totally agree.
That's Cleveland for you. So with Okoro and Mobley winning the Rising Stars Challenge, right? It's not that big of a deal, but it was still amazing to see those guys step up and win it at home. We talk a lot about Mobley. We all know what we believe he can be. What do we think Okoro can be? Because I know last season you and I were pretty high on him. We felt, look, he's a 19-year-old kid. He's got nothing but upside. We felt like he could maybe be a Kawhi Leonard type player one day. There was a lot of rumor in the offseason that he was kind of the most exciting player that was working behind the scenes. And, Larry Nance Jr. was talking a lot about what he might become. And the Cavaliers were even saying that, hey, they envisioned a quarter of the games this year going through Okoro because they wanted to see what he could do when the offense was really run through him. I'm curious what we feel about his progress so far. Obviously on a team like this with so many hot hands, it's been easy for him to kind of have to take a backseat. I don't think he wants to, but I also think he's a very unselfish player that will make that extra pass and defer most games on the stat line simply to get that W. So how do you feel about his progress so far this season?
I agree with that sentiment that you just said. I think he is forced to be in a position where he has to be a little too unselfish right now, but I still see a lot of potential for him. We talked about Jetty in the last episode and how, me personally, I don't think I was looking at how he was playing in the sense of what was around him and what he was being asked to do. I think Okoro is a little bit in that same spot where he's being asked to do certain things or not do certain things. So he's a little unsure offensively, but he's the beast on defense. This team excels at defense. They have 3 7-footers. That is a big reason why the Cavs are a top 5 defensive team. But Okoro is that point of attack defender who, hands down, the Cavs would not be where they are with that type of defense, right?
The shooting guard, the 2 guard is probably the right position for Okoro because even though he's long, he's like only 6'4". So he really does belong at the 2, but he's got the talent to guard just about any position, and guarding down at his natural position, it's so easy to keep him there every night. And really looking at his stat line, he's averaging almost 4 minutes less a game this season, but he's still, last year it was 9.6 points a game, and this year it's at 9. Well, that's not that bad considering he's dropped 4 minutes. He's also shooting 4% better in general and 2% from 3 better, only 31.6%. But a guy that came out of college being kind of a stinker from 3 supposedly, I see a guy that doesn't take a lot of them, and usually when he does take them, the form looks pretty good. I just think that a lot of the time the confidence is not there. Again, he's only 21 years old. He just turned 21 in January. Just like the rest of what mostly is on our roster, it's just a bunch of young guys filled with talent, upside, and at least 4, 5, 6 seasons of being studs in the league for the foreseeable future. So it's very exciting to be a Cavs fan as long as we continue to keep this team together. And I have a lot of hope based on somebody like the Warriors being able to keep their dynasty together with all their amazing players. We brought all these guys in mostly through the draft, but through some savvy trades here at the end. They seem to love playing together and love playing in a small market for the Cavs. So hopefully this just continues to go our way for some time.
The Cavs are coming back on a 2-game losing streak. They've not played as well on the road this season, but have only 10 road games left out of the 26 remaining. What would you like to see improved for the remainder of the year? And what are our chances of ending the season as the number 1 seed in the East?
I'd like to see us improve on the road because I think that most likely if we're going to have any chance to win it all this season, and what do you play if you're not hoping to win it all? You're not aiming to go to the finals and win it. If we're hoping to get there, we're going to have to learn to win some of those games on the road. And the regular season, the best thing that you can say about it is it's just nothing but practice for the postseason. Right now, we've shown that we're going to be able to hold our own on the home games. I think even though we have perennial historic bad luck with referees and horrible calls in Cleveland, we've really managed to, I think, let everyone know in the NBA that we're a serious team. When you come into our house, there's going to be a hard fought game waiting for you. But I don't think we've always done that on the road. I know we've had a really tough schedule to start the season, and I think we're still seeing the effects of that. It's certainly within the stat line, within the wins and losses. And so some of that is just these 2 6-game road trips out to the West, even though we did fairly well on those. We've really, I think for the most part, without going and looking, I can confidently say we've dropped some games this year where either the team was kind of evenly matched with us or they were not as good as we are. Some of that is just, I think, you can't take every single game of the 82-game season seriously. It's just the nature of the way the NBA has changed. You can't play defense the entire season anymore and then be successful in the postseason typically. There's a lot, I think, that we can still learn by figuring out a way to win some of those road games. And I will say the other part is just that the injuries have been consistently our biggest hurdle as well. So we got to see Markkanen come back. We got to see Garland stay healthy. We got to see Allen stay consistently out there. All these guys have to have a string of good luck for once. And we just have to hope that they can make it through the rest of the season unscathed. Because I think if we could really go into the postseason healthy, I think we're going to finish strong, possibly in the top 3. And I think we'd have a real shot at the finals if we could go in healthy.
The direction of health is the most important thing for this team, mainly because Markkanen has the high ankle sprain. You have Garland who has a strained back, which that could impact him the rest of the season, and hopefully it just gets worked out so that he is able to play more games consistently in a row than kind of, one game on, one game off, because the team needs him. I mean, right now, he is their catalyst on offense, and he needs to play every game if he can, right? Because I think for me, they have a shot at making noise in the playoffs. I don't know if they'll get the number 1 seed, only because their offense has dipped some since we trade Rubio and Rondo's come back in. Rondo came over from the Lakers. We're dropping some offensive talent there that we haven't really addressed yet, especially with Markkanen also missing time in that overlap. I think Karis LeVert is a good piece, but he is going to still take some time to kind of mesh with the team. And the last thing I would say is I think JB needs to kind of tinker a little bit here to rely on more of his bench, especially Lamar Stevens. I know that I just talked about offense and I just bring up Lamar, but Lamar's outside shot is much more consistent. He's able to play some bully ball because if he's on a switch and a point guard is on him, or even some small forwards, he is bigger than them. And they need some of their wings to have that physicality, and they don't really have that even with Markkanen. Markkanen is played really well for us when he comes back. He's still less physical, I would say, than Stevens, just because of his type of playing style. And I'm not really sure why JB isn't playing him more. I think he's going to have to play 10 guys more consistently than what he's doing with 8 or 9. Right now, Evan Mobley is leading the team in minutes. I mean, that's great because he's young, but also I think that he's hit a little bit of a rookie wall. That's a lot of games. He played, 20 last year, probably in college? And we need to keep him as fresh as possible. So if JB ever listened to this, 20 years from now, he might think like, oh, that was a solid point. I have hope for this team that they'll still make noise, but I'm a little curious if they can kind of right the ship a little bit with using a little bit more depth to get some more of their offensive woes righted.
The final seconds.
As we said before, Mobley had a great weekend, and he also scored 18 and picked up 11 boards in the Rising Stars Challenge. What truly is the bar for this kid?
I honestly have no idea for Mobley now. Last week we talked about comparing him to Bosch and Durant. The All-Star weekend changed my perspective even more because it's not that he hasn't risen to the occasion, but it was kind of like he took in everything that was going on and then just happened to hit a half-court jumper. He has the ability to do so much And everybody uses the term unicorn. The fact of the matter is unicorns aren't real. Evan Mobley is very real. I think he is a player that is going to be a defining player of his generation. We just had the 75 years. I'm hopeful that he's going to be one of those players that moves into that echelon where you're not even sure, there's just debates about him as to who he is and how much he meant to the game, because we all knew about him. It's not like he was a secret. And he just has exceeded all of my expectations. And when we were so pessimistic about the Cavs last year and how it was going, you would have told me, oh, you're going to get Evan Mobley by going through some of these trials and tribulations. I would have been like, oh, that's cool. I mean, he's a really good player. But I still would not have foreseen kind of what you've brought up here. The floor for this team is so high now because he just raises everybody's game. It's astronomical, and he can't even drink a beer yet.
Yeah, it is amazing what he's been able to achieve so far for his rookie season. Unreal. 15 points, 8 boards, 3 assists, almost 1 steal, almost 2 blocks a game. Rookie year. It's just insane. He's played 50 games, which is, almost triple the amount he played in college. Certainly, I was excited to see that we drafted him. I don't pay enough attention to college basketball to really get excited about anybody. The closer it got to the draft, I started kind of feeling out and looking at some of the videotapes. And the minute I saw this kid, I was kind of hoping we'd get him. And the fact that he fell to number 3, the fact that he didn't go number 1, there's a really good chance. And, Evan still has to continue to live up to this, but I think he's more than capable. There's a really good chance that, he's going to be talked about historically on a level of, you didn't take him 1? Who went number 1? And it's not that I think, it's going to be on par with like a Jordan type thing. But I do think that Mobley, the fact that he's come in, he's almost averaging a double-double in his rookie year. He immediately became the starter on a team in the NBA that had Kevin Love. I think if it wasn't for Evan Mobley's talent and ability and leadership coming right out of college, I think he would have definitely come off the bench. Kevin would definitely have been starting this year. And I think once Kevin saw what Evan Mobley was going to be, he felt more comfortable coming off the bench. Like, oh, no, you know what? I'll mentor this guy. I'll sit behind this guy because he's going to make me look good. So, yeah, he's exciting. And I think, what's the bar for this kid? There isn't one. He has to decide.
With LeBron announcing his intention to play his last season on whatever team drafts his son, is that tampering? Did he just ensure that his son not only will be drafted, but may go even higher, knowing he comes with his dad at a bargain price?
That's how I read it. I was kind of like, really? Really? I mean, the question was, would you ever see yourself coming back to Cleveland? That was the question. And the answer was, yeah, I don't know, but wherever I go, if they draft my kid, I'm going to go there. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that the NBA allowed you to announce any player being the player that then, if you get them, then you get me. And you get me at whatever price makes that work. But we've known for a long time now that the NBA is rigged in the sense that they all have kind of conversations behind closed doors and make these plans, whether it's, blatantly obvious, like what happened with the Miami situation and Wade and Bosh and LeBron, or somebody like Paul Gasol going to the Lakers, or the Chris Paul trade debacle that happened where there are things where the NBA clearly kind of steps in, or the players have already decided what they're going to do. But this has been another one of those, like, for a brief moment, jaw-dropping moments where I'm going, no one's going to call this out for what it is? I guess we'll have to talk about it on our podcast. And then, the few people that listen to our podcast will think, that doesn't seem right. Maybe we'll get a few angry letters to Adam Silver going. So what do you think?
I just am always blown away by LeBron's media savvy and ability to dictate the world that he's in. It helps that he has been familiar with the media since he was a child, since 16. I mean, he is close as we might ever get to an actual version of the Truman Show. I agree with you. There's definitely a level of tampering when you say, hey, this guy here, if you draft him, I'm just going to show up on your roster. But at the same time, I'm not surprised by it at all because nobody thinks about it. It's why after the decision, I remember you and I having whole discussions about how did no NBA reporter look up parking permits and large scale media permits in Miami to realize that he was going to Miami. In Florida, little known fact, they actually have it's quite easy to get information. They actually have quite open levels of freedom of information that reporters are able to get access to that stuff. It would have taken one reporter to be like, oh, hey, the Miami Heat are asking for like a bunch of cops to show up tomorrow for security. Huh, weird. Public people to come in to approve this stuff. I completely agree with you. It is jaw-dropping just at the level of gravitas and narcissism and all this other stuff. And I say narcissism, that's a negative thing, but I say that in kind of a loving thing with LeBron. Like of course he's somewhat narcissistic. He's LeBron James.
He's the king.
Yeah, you can't have that without being the king, right?
I can understand if he was like, hey, so when my contract's up with LA here, I'm going to retire. I'm done, right? But my son is coming to the league. And when he gets into a team where, he's settled, I'm going to come out of retirement and I'm going to play a couple of seasons there. You can do whatever you want, man. You're a private citizen. You can come back into the league and play with whoever you want. But you're saying, no, before I retire, I'm going to go play for somebody where you're going to sign me for cheap because you picked up my son. Well, then are we going to see a contending team already somehow step into a draft pick that then they can pick up his son so they get LeBron? Like what is it? Oh, God. What did you think of the All-Star Game format with the Elam ending? This is the third year they have done this. Do you enjoy the change in how we followed the points with the final quarter ending in a final total instead of the final second?
I enjoy this format immensely, mainly because of what you've said or referenced about the All-Star Game, which is it's a big show. You've mentioned in the past that it's the Globetrotters versus the Globetrotters. But I think this adds an element of authenticity and tryhardness where the players all of a sudden are like, it's just like when we would play 21 in pickup games and stuff like that. You know where your goal is, and those guys thrive at meeting goals, obviously because they're at the upper echelons of their game. So I think this is a format that the All-Star Game should keep continuing to do. I've even heard some rumors, some NBA Twitter folks have said like this would be a fun thing to try out in G League, just to like add an element of like, let's see what this looks like in different places. I don't think it'll ever be a regular season deal, but maybe for one of the play-ins they do it this way, just to make the game a little faster, to add a little bit of extra pressure where you also can't be like, all right, well, I'm going to take 3 fouls and, 4 timeouts in the last minute and a half. And so, you go from a minute and a half to 15 minutes just standing around, right? So I think they should keep this setup going forward.
Yeah, I really like the way that it just kind of spices up, changes the format to something that to me had long ago staled. And much of the All-Star weekend still feels pretty stale, right? Yeah, the dunk contest needs some help. And I heard a good suggestion from Stephen A. Smith that I will not repeat here. But go look for it because that's a unicorn in and of itself right there, right? A good suggestion from him. The game was a lot more fun to watch. Honestly, the last couple of years with COVID and just other stuff going on, it's been difficult for me to pay attention to the All-Star Game. And this year I actually watched it mostly in its entirety, and I just found myself actually enjoying it for once. And it was just a new way to experience the game being played and watching the players have to meet the challenge. And you can tell that, they tie or they kind of split quarters on purpose because it's all for charity and those things. They were doing that before when they were trying to play a regular game. We all know it has no meaning. It doesn't, there was nothing writing on it. And there really shouldn't be. I mean, I don't think they should go in the direction of the way other sports have it where, whoever wins then gets home field advantage or any of that stuff. Like overall, I thought it was a really refreshing thing they did several years ago. I hope they continue to do it. Hope they continue to think about how else they can change other parts of the All-Star Weekend experience. Certainly, it reminds me a lot of the kind of standard pickup games or street games that you see. And there's a lot of fun in that. Many people don't know about that stuff, but when it's televised, when it's actually out there, it's very entertaining. And it's very cool to see some of the greatest basketball players, freak athletes of all time, participate in these types of things. So it's pretty neat.
The Cavs made a bunch of front office moves, most notably with Mike Gansey going from assistant GM to GM, and Brandon Weems to assistant general manager from his previous title as a senior director of playing personnel. What do you make of these changes?
It's not going to mean too much to most of us on the outside. What I do appreciate is that it is an indication that they really do believe in fostering an environment where they're going to grow from within, that they promote from within when people move up, the people behind them move up. And I think to me, that has to be promoting an environment that is just kind of the right mentality, and you're growing a culture that you can kind of look to and say, well, no, there's history here and it all connects. The one thing that I lamented about LeBron's years back was that there was this hurry up and win kind of feeling from the city and from the fan base. Some of that came from Cleveland needing to win a championship now, not just in the NBA, but in all sports. We just had to win one now. The thing about basketball that I love is when a team can become a dynasty, when they become the formidable force within the sport itself. And now, you have to speak their name when you think of the game. And that's what I wanted the Cavaliers to become. It starts with these kinds of moves, right? It starts with the type of building blocks that year after year, that foundation that you're building upon remains, and you continue to build upon that foundation. And I think since LeBron has left, I think now we can finally just do that and not need him to come back or another person like him to be here. He did show us the right way to win. And now I feel like we're finally starting to learn how to be the dynasty type organization that we've said we wanted to be, like a la Spurs kind of organization. I think all of this is really good news for the continuity and therefore longevity of the team itself.
I mean, I completely agree. It is kind of this weird thing where you're like, okay, cool, some dudes got promoted. But I think it's more indicative of how there's a healthy front office and a healthy organization that is trying to move forward collectively. You referenced earlier in the pod the success that the Warriors have had, and a lot of that success is because once they brought in Steve Kerr and their head of basketball operations and their GM and whatnot, they're all people who connect with each other and have been promoted and have been there. I had listened to an interview with Kobe Altman over All-Star Weekend, been with the Cavs for over a decade already in other roles, obviously before, he's been promoted so much. But when you listen to him, he doesn't do a lot of media, but he really does care about Cleveland and he cares about the Cavs. And I think this is a way of him kind of showing, and Gilbert showing, this is how we do actually care about this team and Cleveland. They want this organization to be stable and to be a beacon, like what you brought up. They don't want the Cleveland Cavaliers to be a laughingstock in any way. They don't want them to be a team that only wins 17 games because that's what they were aiming for. So I think it's refreshing to see the Cavs, after a player like LeBron is just this immense figure, that they're able to have some stability, and that it's not just stability for the sake of being like, oh, hey, we're in this together. It's stability and growth at the same time. So I think it's refreshing.
Thank you for listening to the Cavaliers Basketball Club podcast. Let's go Cavs!